Good morning, everyone. My name is Diane Faria. I'm the Director of Operations for HIA-LI, and it is our pleasure to welcome you to the HIA-LI Current and Future Growth event. Really glad you're all here today. We have an excellent panel lined up for you and excellent conversation in store. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to kick off the program. Please welcome up the President and CEO of HIA-LI, Terry Maselli.
So good morning again, and welcome everybody to our annual update. We're really excited about the work that's been done. Many of you know that our advocacy with the Hauppauge Industrial Park started many, many years ago, actually in 1978. That's how our organization was born, when Jack Holker and several other business leaders went to advocate to get the lights back on. There was a 3-day power outage. So we've come a long way. Certainly our organization has grown out, and we represent now all of Long Island business. And I'm really excited to tell you that we're coming home. Joe's in back of me. I'm a little nervous that Joe's in back of me. I don't know. But we're certainly, this is a very large initiative for us. And, you know, I will tell you that Joe Campolo, probably about 2.5 years ago, came to us, and it was his brainchild to spearhead this Hauppauge Industrial Park Economic Impact Study. You should all have the executive summary, or at least a few copies of it, on your tables. We have found out, wow, the impact that this park holds. You'll hear a little bit more about it in a few minutes. And we are now on several stages later, where our partners at the Suffolk RDA, RPA, and certainly James Lima are helping us with an opportunity analysis. We are so excited about the potential. Help us welcome up HIA-LI Board Chair Joe Campolo and Managing Partner of Campolo, Middleton and McCormack, LLP.
Thanks, Terry, and thanks everybody for being here. You know, it's with absolute pleasure and honor that I serve as the board chair of the HIA-LI. As I like to remind everybody when I get a chance to talk, you know, the board members that I work with are some of the hardest working people here on Long Island, doing it voluntarily, all for us, all for all of Long Islanders, to try and make the business community stronger, better, growing, more profitable, you know, all for our benefit. So one of the most important initiatives right now that we're working on, due to our very good friends at the Suffolk County IDA, is they have sponsored, which means paid for, okay, a strategic partnership with the RPA to start looking at the park and start looking at what the future of the park could look like with some love and some money and some time. Okay, and part of that process is James Lima was engaged. James has been working with us. He's a really incredibly talented guy who has a lot of experience and expertise in this area, and he's come up sort of with a presentation that we're going to start with, I think, because it's really important to kick it off, to really see the challenges and the possibilities going forward. So our first order of business is, James, I'd like to invite you to give your presentation. We'd like to keep it as brief as possible, but we'd like you to do it, okay? And but it's a really good way to kick it off.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning. I'm James Lima. I have a real estate, economic, and public policy consulting firm, James Lima Planning and Development. So I'm going to quickly run through some illustrative examples of case studies of elsewhere where, with some interventions and partnerships, innovation is spurred, economic growth is unlocked, and an economy is transferred to kind of a next generation of advanced manufacturing. Workforce pipelines are expanded, and the potential of them is fulfilled, working with academic institutions in the region. And then entrepreneurship is encouraged through mentoring and incubators and structuring of relationships between well-established businesses and those new entrepreneurs who need shared facilities, shared expenses, and co-working space. How can you create industry clusters? How can you create more strategic partnerships with Stony Brook and others? That process is already underway. But how do you create a workforce pipeline that is really robust, that is combined with looking at some of the quality of life issues for talent attraction and retention, which includes housing affordability, mobility, and education, and other things that are bigger issues for the Long Island community. So we'll be coming back periodically for updates, but our process is roughly 6 months. And with that, I'll take questions.
So partnership is not just about private sector, it's about public sector, public-private partnerships. That's what it's all about in today's economy. We have two great partners on our panel today, Supervisor Carpenter and Councilman Lohman. And one of the things that I want to ask both of you, right? First of all, I want to thank you for your support of the park. But one of the things is we want to be good partners as well. We want to be good to you the way that you are being good to us. And one of that things requires an awareness and a sensitivity to constituent buy-in and residential communities around the park and everything else. So Supervisor Carpenter, I'd like to start with you and talk about sort of those challenges and how we can help, what we can be partnering with you as well to do.
Buy-in from the residents is really, really important, constituents. Because anyone who comes to a town board meeting or goes to the county legislature, whenever you have a project in front of you, you usually have the immediate neighbors who are coming out and don't want it, We're choking with property taxes. It's not a secret here in this region, but we want to be here. We want to raise our families here. I want to see my grandchildren stay here. And how are we going to do that? The only way we're going to do it is by building our economic base. With a tax cap in place, you can't really raise taxes enough to cover the cost of what's going up, your contracted expenses, union contracts, whatever it is. So you've got to grow the base. And we in government in the town of Islip are committed to making it easier to do that. The fact that we've got a re-energized Supervisors Association, we met just this past week, where all 10 town supervisors coming together on a regular basis, looking at things regionally, partnerships, and the county has been tremendous. And I just want to salute, and I'm going to mention the elected officials that took the time to be here this morning, because if the elected officials, if the government is not here with you, understanding the challenges that you face. I grew up in business. I owned a business. And every time there was another regulation, I felt like it was personally aimed at me, like, why don't they leave me alone? I'm just trying to run a business. So I know how you feel. We want to help, and I know that our neighbors in Smithtown, who really have the lion's share of this park, are really committed to that.
Great. So, Tom, moving forward now, what are the challenges and how can we help with the residents, and how can we help the elected officials with the constituents and residents to make sure that we're, from a business person's perspective, this is a no-brainer. Why are we not just doing it? And I'm going to team Mitch up on that one in a minute soon, right? And from an elected, you have a million different concerns. So talk about that process so the business community, understand the challenges there.
Well, as a freshman to the Smithtown Town Board, I'm getting my feet wet with a lot of this. And one of the reasons that I decided to get into the political arena was, as a lifelong resident, there was a lot of things that were not happening in our business districts in Smithtown. We were kind of dying on a vine in some places. And I felt it was time to get involved and to try and change the trajectory where we had been going, which I believe has been stagnant and downward. We want to support the park. One of the first things that the supervisor did was ask me to be the liaison to the Hauppauge Industrial Park. So if there is problems, we can communicate, talk back and forth. Terry and her group have done a phenomenal job. We're making a big investment into the park with roads and sidewalks. So it's going to be an open line of communication, which I think absolutely will benefit the park itself, as well as the residents in the town of Smithtown.
Mitch is probably one of the most valuable resources we have here on Long Island. He really is. He's a wealth of information, of knowledge, of all the things that we're talking about here, right? And so, Mitch, when you sit here, and you see the PowerPoint that James put on, and you look at all the work that's ahead of us and needs to be done and can be done, what are your thoughts? I want to know that you're such an optimistic guy all the time. I want to know, what are your thoughts here?
I'm tremendously optimistic in the next couple of years at the park under Terry's leadership and all your leadership and the new plan, will fashion a way to integrate uses, which is the new way of doing things in our communities, and allow for this park to be really in the 21st century, so that when companies decide where they want to go, you use the perfect example. GE was in Stamford, in a suburban area for many years. They're no longer in Stamford. They're now in Boston. Why? Because around the new GE campus and in the campus is everything together. And that was 10,000 employees who picked up and moved to Boston in that regard. There's no reason this park can't be a conduit for opportunities like that, but it needs the type of amenities that the plan will hopefully produce to allow everything to be in the same place.
Thanks. So one of the things that I do want to point out is, in addition to Mitch, one of the greatest resources that we have is Kelly Morris and the Suffolk IDA. What are your thoughts about the opportunities and the challenges that you're seeing from the IDA perspective, and the opportunities of the IDA inside the park as well?
Our missions are similar, and Terry and I have been talking about this, and I won't mention name, but there's a really exciting project that you're all going to see very soon on Motor Parkway that kind of demonstrates what it is that we're all trying to do. Where we go vertical, it's a mixed use, it does not have residential, however it's the flexible office space with a patio on top and a restaurant below. And Tony Catapano, the director, and I met with these folks a couple of years ago, and it really was what inspired Terry and I to really talk further about how we could create visioning and planning to really realize the potential growth for Hauppauge Industrial Park and bringing it into a 21st century eco-industrial park. And that's certainly what we're trying to do. And we really encourage as much involvement as possible from the stakeholders, from folks that work in the park or own businesses in the park. Your input, your creative thinking, the needs of the park better than anyone. So we'll be making all of our meetings as well known as possible, both on the HIA site and on the Suffolk County IDA site.
Great, thanks. James, what do you see as the first immediate steps that we need to take or should be taking to start down this very arduous path?
I think one of the biggest risks to this idea going forward is a lack of clear vision among the park leadership. People often think that the problem is money, right? We would do more, but there's no money. My experience, the opposite is true. If you have a clear and compelling vision that's backed up with market data, which is the easy part, and you have leadership, those two things, the money will follow. And we need to position you better to capture private investment and capital investment, but also public funding. It's clear that something of this scale in this largest metropolitan region in the nation with this kind of access to capital is an underperforming asset. And you just have to decide what you want.
Yep. So Mitch, I want to turn to you. One of Mitch's greatest talents is being able to walk that neutral line, right? What do we need to be doing more or better to attract the attention of the forces that be in the public sector that can help, fund us? I mean, the towns are here, they're engaged, but they're limited budgets. The bigger budgets, how can we help engage them more into these projects that's going on?
I would agree with Jim, is that you need a list of priorities. And, when the park and Islip and Smithtown made getting sewers for the park a priority, it got done. And listen, if there were no sewers, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because we'd be stuck in the 1960s with septics and sewage treatment plant, which cannot lead to any growth. The growth of the park and its opportunity to integrate new uses is totally dependent upon the sewer system, which was totally dependent upon Islip and Smithtown and the county coming together and saying, and the park leadership coming together and saying, this is the most important infrastructure project that could benefit the park. And it got done. I have no doubt that doing this the correct way, based on a plan, and millions and millions of dollars of development opportunities will follow, without a doubt.
That's great. So Supervisor Carpenter, let's talk a little bit, because you're a tough lady, but you know how to build consensus and you know how to get things done in government. And so how can we build the right consensus and get the right path forward?
It's important that real, actual, factual information is out there. So that website with that information, I think, is really key. But again, the participation of groups like HIA and Libby and anyone else who really understands how important it is for us to keep moving forward and have development. And I'm not talking about creating queens here, but we've got to continue to move forward, otherwise we're going to be left behind, because as Mitch said, it's happening in other places.
Right. So Tom, you're newly elected. You ran on a pro-business platform, and what are you learning over these 4 or 5 months? The challenges to build consensus, and how we can help you, in your decision-making process and understanding things better as well.
Well, I mean, right now, being the liaison for the town to the Hauppauge Industrial Association, and working with Terry and her team, I'm taking that information, I'm learning from that information, but I'm also bringing it back, I'm sharing it with the town boards. One of the things that I mentioned earlier on this afternoon or this morning was the creation of a business advisory board that we're currently in the process of doing. Now, last year, I think the census said we lost 6,000 people, young people, in Suffolk County alone. In Smithtown, we have a declining enrollment in our schools. That's a problem. We have to be able to sit here and look at this objectively, and what can we do to bring our community back to where it once was. And I think what we're doing here with the HIA and a plan, hopefully we can reverse that and change with the overlay with the zoning, because as Angie has said, with the zoning changes, it's hard, but if we're able to get some things done with this, with an overlay, maybe go up, increase the height, buildings, you can build them up a little bit more, you can put technology come in, as opposed to just strictly manufacturing, to tie that all into creating a better business model.
Yep. The incentive is to grow the workforce.
Right.
And we have less of a workforce. How is that all gonna work? The other part of that is with the lack of the ability for these businesses to expand, how are they gonna grow their workforce as well?
One of the things we've seen is that there's a big disconnect between folks coming out of college and getting into, especially, say, the pharma, nutraceutical, or manufacturing world, where, the degree that they've come out with doesn't necessarily prepare them for what that company needs. So some of the conversation that we believe has started and needs to continue taking place is how that curriculum can get developed with companies. Talk about private-public relationships, right? This is where it's really critical that and some of the CEOs from the pharma companies that met with County Executive Steve Ballone said, hey, let us write the curriculums. And I got to put the plug in for multifamily housing, because, clearly if there's a variety of housing choices for young folks, the 19 to 34-year-olds, they'll have more of an impetus to stay. I mean, we know that we have the best schools in the country, but keeping the kids that graduate from those schools, that's an important thing for all of us to be focusing on.
Yeah, that's a big trick. And Mitch, I'm going to do a quick follow-up with you, and then we're going to open it up for questions. I think folks have questions. So the pipeline of workforce, right, is critical. But what are your thoughts? How do we build that pipeline? How are we, it's a complex question, but we got to start doing something, right? So what are the steps?
The young people who are coming out of college or want to move to the island, they don't want to buy my house.
Right.
Okay? My house is 30 years old, in a nice area in Stony Brook. I'd be more than happy to sell it to them, but they don't want to buy my house. Not because it's not a nice house, and not because it's not a nice area, but because that's not their lifestyle need at the moment. And if we don't provide the rental housing that they want, in the places they want it, which are mainly in the downtowns, we are not going to be able to create the lifestyle they want. Their lifestyle is more than working at a high-tech company, or more than working in the park, the Hauppauge Industrial Park, one of the great companies. It's how do they enjoy themselves differently than we did. And for that, rental housing, especially in the downtown area, especially by the train station so they can go back and forth to the city, is so essential. Just about every downtown area on Long Island, which is prospering at the moment, has built multifamily housing downtown. We've started to meet the needs of our young people. We need to do more, and as we do more young people will start their career here, and when they start their career here and their family here, they will stay. But if we don't provide them the opportunity to start, they will not come.
Great point. James, you had something to add to that? If anybody has questions, we can take a couple of questions. There's a mic on the side there.
Just quickly, I agree with everything Mitch just said. I just want to add one other thing. Long Island's in the long shadow of Manhattan and Brooklyn in terms of attracting millennials and young workforce talent. But one of the things that's a really important additional piece for economic development and competitiveness is being more hip and cool. And so one clear demonstrated way to grow economically is to invest in arts and culture. We just finished New York City's first ever citywide cultural plan. The economic power of arts and culture investment is enormous. So Huntington, Patchogue are just a few examples have been really strategic about using the arts as an economic driver, but more and more of your downtowns need to be increasing the programming and the presence of arts and culture and beer halls.
So it's 10 o'clock. I think we're going to end as scheduled. I'd like to thank our incredible panel for joining us here today. And I do want to thank Terry and the entire HIA-LI staff for putting this incredible program together. A lot of work goes into this, so let's give them a round of applause as well. And I hope everybody has a nice day, and Diane's going to harass you more about the trade show now, I'm sure.
No. Maybe. Okay, no, just thank you again to everyone. Thank you to our panel. Another huge round of applause.